Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Fortunes. Now, we've had an international break, which I've never understood why they do it so early in the season. Just when the Premier League season has got underway, they throw some international football in there. Transfer window, that is now done and dusted as well. A lot of drama on the final day. Some deals that people thought were going to go through didn't go through, and some very big deals did go through. So that helps mix things up a little bit. But now, anyway, after a week off, we are finally back to some more Premier League football. And that means we need to get our team sorted because there's not much time to go. So without further ado, let's have a look at this week's fixtures. Now, it's always a bit tricky getting your team sorted after an international break, mainly because there's a lot of players going out to a lot of different countries all over the globe. A lot of travel involved. Some of them you don't know how they're going to come back, how they're going to be feeling when they come back to training with their clubs in the week. So there might be some big names missing. So the first fixture of the game week then is quite a big one. Early kickoff on Saturday, Man City at home to Liverpool. Now, starting with Man City, it's quite a tricky one really, because I've said it before, they've got so many different players, so many class players that could come into their side. And I don't think Pep knows his best side yet whatsoever. You saw him try to add to it with Alexis Sanchez in the transfer window. Tried to chuck Raheem Sterling the other way, which I don't think he was too happy about. So, yeah, nobody's really picked up any great form. There's not a consistent lineup or anything that he's going with, so it's quite tricky really to pick players from the Man City side. So the only player that I would really go with would be David Silva, just because he has been the only consistent mainstay of that Man City midfield at this point, getting assists, looks likely to pop up with a goal as well, and in a big game against Liverpool at home, he's the kind of big experienced player that you really need to step up. Now, when we look at the Liverpool side, you could pick any one of their front three really, especially after all their performances against Arsenal in the last game week. So any one of Firmino, Mohamed Salah and Mane could come into that team and could score goals against what has looked actually quite a shaky Man City defence. Coutinho though, he did play for Brazil over the international break, got himself a goal as well. So it'll be interesting to see what relations are like between him and the club, and whether he'll come straight back into the starting lineup and they'll play this whole Coutinho's happy at the club thing, in which case he could come back in. But you'd have to think he's probably going to come back, I don't know whether he'll play in a centre attacking midfield position or whether he'll come in on the wings for one of those front three, but that'd be harsh to get rid of one of them. So Coutinho, yeah, I'd probably stay away from him. I think he's more likely to be on the bench and come back in later into the game. The next fixture then, moving on to Arsenal, who did lose 4-0 to Liverpool in the last game week. A bit of a laughable transfer window for them really, a lot of players going out and not much coming back the other way. So in terms of the lineup, it's tricky with Arsenal, because the problem is, what I think could happen in this game is that he's going to put all the big boys out. I mean, he's got to put all the big boys out after starting Lacazette on the bench against Liverpool. That didn't go down too well, so you'd have to expect Lacazette, Ozil to be in there, and I think Sanchez has got to start as well. They've got to show that, well, I think Wenger will try and make it look like Sanchez is still very happy at the club and he'll play for this season. And in fairness to Sanchez, he's the kind of player that does seem to put it all out there when he is on the pitch, because he loves playing football, and this could be the kind of game where he turns up, scores a couple of goals, they quite easily roll over Bournemouth, and then Wenger just goes on and pretends that everything is actually perfectly fine. Which would be a really Wenger-y thing to do, to be honest. So that wouldn't surprise me if that was to happen. So I think, yeah, you do quite well to get any one of those Arsenal front three or four in the side. I mean, it's a bit of a risk to take with the form that they're in, and they are quite expensive, but I really think it could pay off for you this week. I think Sanchez could actually do some things this week against Bournemouth, who, yeah, let's face it, haven't had a great start to the season either. And then if we're looking at the Bournemouth side, I mean, there's not really anybody to pick from that side that I can think of initially. Maybe Jermaine Defoe would probably be about the only person that you would want to go for if you wanted to pluck for someone. Ex-Tottenham, obviously, playing against Arsenal. Not scored this season, but he can get a goal from any situation. And with the Arsenal back line looking as they are at the minute, if a ball bounces his way in the box, you'd expect him to finish it. Moving on then to Brighton versus West Brom. Now, this is going to be a really attritional battle, and we all know that they are the kind of battles that West Brom absolutely love. They've added further defensive power to their squad over the transfer window with Kukoviak coming in and Kieran Gibbs as well. You'd probably expect them to start, but I don't think they're going to be massive point scorers. I think this is going to be one goal either way. Probably looking at West Brom sneaking it, I think. And I would just stack your team full with West Brom defenders if you could. Foster's always great to have in there, only 4.5 in goal. going to make saves if called upon. And then you've got Johnny Evans, scored a goal for Northern Ireland the other day. He should be coming back into the side, you think, if he's mentally there after all the transfer speculation he had. But even so, Hegazi, Dawson coming into that side, you're onto a winner there, I think, with a West Brom clean sheet against the Brighton. I know they're playing away, but Brighton have just struggled for goals, and West Brom on the team you want to be playing when you're struggling for goals. Moving on to what I think is going to be quite a cagey game. We've got Everton at home to Tottenham. Now, Everton obviously invested massively over the transfer window, spent lots and lots of money, but they're still not looking like a side that are going to score lots of goals. They do look like a very good side, but they don't have a lot of pace. They don't look like they're going to get in behind teams. And against a defence like Tottenham's, you think they're going to struggle to get through that defence. So looking at players to put in from Everton, I mean, Rooney's been good this season, but with all the drink driving allegations and stuff, you don't know where his head's going to be at, whether he's going to necessarily play or not. Gylfi Sigurdsson, you'd expect him to start, and being an ex-Tottenham player, maybe he could do something from a set piece or provide that little bit of something special to get the goal against Tottenham. Looking at the Tottenham side itself, obviously it's not August anymore, so Harry Kane might score a goal, he might not score a goal. 12.5 million, it's a big risk to take that he might finally pluck one out away to an Everton side that will be quite resolute at the back. So the only person I'd really stick in from them would basically be the Tottenham equivalent of Gylfi Sigurdsson, and that is Christian Eriksen. He's had a very good international break, got himself a goal and 2 or 3 assists as well over the last week. And if he carries on that form, he's going to be the kind of person that all he's going to take is just a set piece or a little bit of quality from either team to get a winner in that one. Another quite big game as well then following straight on after that, we've got Leicester City playing at home to Chelsea. Now, Leicester have shown glimpses of the stuff that they played when they won the title a couple of seasons ago. Chelsea have been a bit hit and miss. I think they're still a team struggling to kind of find the way that they're going to be playing football this season, how they're going to set up and the players that are going to be involved. But you can see they are now settling down and looking a bit more dominant. So in this one, Leicester, I know they're playing at home. If they play the free-flowing football that we know they're capable of, I think they could get picked off quite happily on the counter by Chelsea, who I imagine away from home are going to set up very, very solid. They'll have 5 at the back with the wing-backs, a very defensive-minded midfield, and then Morata as that outball. So I'd have to say Chelsea probably going to edge this one on the day, I think. In terms of players you're going to get in there, Morata's had a good international break. He's not come up against the strongest sides. I mean, he did bag a goal against Italy, in fairness to him, coming on late in that one. So I'd put him in if you're fancying a Chelsea win in that one, and saying obviously he'll be a good shout for the entirety of the season if you wanted to get him in long term. Other than that, there's not anybody that you're going to say is going to be consistently scoring for points still at this point with Chelsea, and they've got such a small squad. Maybe a Willian or Marcos Alonso again, because we all know what he's capable of, but he's so expensive at 7.1 for a defender that, yeah, you don't really know that that's going to pay off. And in terms of Leicester, if they do manage to break down the Chelsea backline, it's going to be a bit of magic, I think, from a Riyad Mahrez, something like that. Obviously, Danny Drinkwater going the other way, it's yet to see whether that's really going to massively affect that Leicester midfield. But I think it's going to take something a bit special to break down this Chelsea defence. On to Southampton then, playing at home against Watford. Both had 0-0 draws in their last games. Watford at home to Brighton and Southampton away at Huddersfield. Yeah, Southampton haven't been free-flowing and scoring goals, well, apart from when they played West Ham, but let's face it, everyone's been free-flowing and scoring goals against West Ham this season so far. But with Southampton playing at home, you'd expect maybe that they're going to edge this one. They've got their confidence now after that 3-2 win at against West Ham at home a couple of weeks ago. So if they're going to get in, then it's difficult to say Gabbiadini, maybe Charlie Austin, but in this one I'd mainly be looking at Southampton defenders. I think Ryan Bertrand obviously got his first goal for England over the international break. He's looked good bombing up and down that left side, might be able to get himself an assist, or if he's feeling confident, have another couple of pops at goal and nip himself one there. Other than that, I mean, Yoshida's, he's been a good point scorer for Southampton so far this season. He's a bit of a threat going forwards as well, so maybe him. Other than that, there's nobody that's really been very consistent for Southampton at all. And then when we're looking at Watford, they're a team very much hot and cold in this season so far. You either get free-flowing, lovely attacking football and goals, or you get nothing at all and they look quite void of ideas, really. Andre Gray, though, has looked quite likely since turning up at Watford this season. Maybe if Watford are going to steal a goal, he'll be the one on the end of it this week. A test then for the Manchester United team that has been walking this league so far this season, playing away at a Stoke side that are turning up a little bit in the style ranks this season. They've got some very interesting players in their side now, but you can't bet against Man U in this one at all. Really been dominating so far this season, and you'd expect them to again be quite comfortable. I know there are teams that struggle to go to Stoke, but I don't think that's going to be the case this weekend. And again, as you've got a plethora of Man United players to choose from, whether you pick David De Gea in goal, getting still not conceded a goal, Phil Jones at the back as well. You've got Pogba, Mkhitaryan, Rashford scoring goals for England now as well. Lukaku up front, got some goals for Belgium over the international break as well. So I mean, yeah, literally just pick any Man U player really, and they'll probably do well. On to Super Sunday then, and it is a real Super Sunday to cherish this week. Our first fixture, we have Burnley at home to Crystal Palace. Now, Burnley, a side that we saw, they really turned up against Chelsea, obviously getting that win on the first day, and they're just a solid side as they always have been. But in terms of players that are really going to light it up, there's not many to pick from. So you always normally go with Burnley defenders. Now, obviously, Tom Heaton in goal, quality goalkeeper, get you some saves in there as well. So you'd have to think that probably Burnley are not going to concede against the Crystal Palace side that haven't scored a goal yet this season. So then you could either pick any of their defenders as well. Stephen Ward's been doing very well. Ben Mee, they're all about 4.5 I think at the back for Burnley, so pick any one of them and you're just as likely as any of the others really. And then, I mean, if you're going to go for someone to get a goal in a fixture like this, that could be decided by a scrappy goal, probably the way that Crystal Palace have been defending. Someone like Sam Vokes or something that's going to get on the end of it, or maybe something a bit special from the likes of like Robbie Brady, something like that, a free kick could decide it. In this one, Crystal Palace, let's face it, no form, they're rubbish, don't pick any of their players. Moving on to the second fixture on Super Sunday, which is Swansea at home to Newcastle United. Now, Swansea really struggling at the start of the season, not had an easy start whatsoever, but I mean, their transfer window has just completely changed that, especially in the last couple of days. Getting in Renato Sanchez and Wilfried Bony has really just transformed their squad, and now it actually looks like a very decent squad. They've had a couple of players the last game as well that started to play quite well. Tammy Abraham, I think he has been solid for them all season. It would be a shame if he ends up being dropped for Wilfried Bony. I'd like to see them both play, or at least Tammy Abraham start, because I think he deserves that. Renato Sanchez, you imagine, he's been promised games. You'd think he's going to come straight into that midfield. And at 5 million, you'd be silly not to get him in. And Wilfried Bony as well. I mean, I remember back in the days when he was an 8 and 8.5. He's only 6 million now, coming back in. Like I say, I don't know whether he'll get the start over Tammy Abraham, but you'd imagine he's probably going to feature if he's got the fitness and has been doing his pre-season work. So either one of those two, or Tammy Abraham, or Leroy Fer is also a good shout. He's been playing well, but he doesn't always start. He's one of those who does very well off the bench for Swansea. So he's a bit more of a risk, but at 5.5 million is a risk worth taking, to be honest. And then when we go to Newcastle United, now obviously in the last game, they got their first win of the season against West Ham. 3-0, made it look very easy. West Ham were very poor. Do you take much from that? Do you say that they're going to carry on that form? Is that going to be a little kickstart for the season for them? Or is it just literally West Ham being that terrible that Newcastle are then going to struggle against a side that are going to be buoyed by their transfers in Swansea City? If you think they're going to do well, then the players you want to be looking at really from their midfield are going to be Matt Ritchie, Christian Atsu, getting down those wings and firing balls into the middle, especially if you've got the likes of Mitrovic playing, looking to get on the end of them. Ioza Perez looking to clear up anything that falls to him in the box. But yeah, I think it's a bit difficult to choose who's necessarily going to be starting up front for Newcastle. But Matt Ritchie, Christian Atsu are almost definitely going to be in there. And a solid shouts if you think Newcastle can get anything out of this game. The final fixture of the game week then, it's the Irons. It's West Ham at home to Huddersfield. Now, this is the first game that we're going to play at home this season after the World Championships at the Olympic Stadium. And by no means is the Olympic Stadium a fortress for West Ham at all. But it'll be nice just to be back home, see if we can get the fans behind the team and see if that will boost our performance a little bit. I say we've no consistency, no real form whatsoever from any of our players. But If it's going to be a scrappy game, and that is the kind of fixture that West Ham will turn this into, then you've got to look at players like Mikhail, Antonio and Javier Hernandez to finish anything off, or do that nice little bobbly little run or slice little scuff finish that's going to end up in the bottom corner and maybe get us a goal in this one. I'd like to think West Ham are going to win it, and I'd like to think that Huddersfield aren't going to cause us any trouble, and their kind of initial fast start from being in the Premier League for the first time ever is maybe going to wind down a little bit now. I mean, that would be really useful if they could just settle down for this game against us. But then looking at Huddersfield's side, I mean, again, it's one of those things where they're playing West Ham at the end of the day. It's the kind of fixture where anybody could do anything. I mean, a terrible, scrappy, horrific goal from a defender or midfielder getting a toe poke on it, or an error or a penalty, anything like that against West Ham is completely possible. I'm not entirely sure who takes penalties for Huddersfield, but whoever that is, and if you know who that is, might be worth getting them in your team. Moy has been solid for Huddersfield, and he's cheap, about 5.5 million. So maybe get him in. He's been a real leader for them on the pitch this season. And then you've got a big lump up top in Mounier. Exactly the kind of player that Fonte and Ogbonna and Collins and Reed, or whoever's playing tomorrow, is going to be struggling with, because that's just the kind of thing that we struggle with. So maybe worth getting him in there. He could get himself a goal from any kind of situation, really. So it's a free-for-all when you come to this game. I'm going to say that I think West Ham can win it. West Ham need to win it if we're realistically going to get any confidence and get up that table this season. Huddersfield, they will be looking and seeing this as another fixture they can win and get further and further away from that relegation zone. Thank you very much for watching again then. As always, let me know what you think about my opinions. Obviously, if you disagree, feel free to let me know about that as well. Who would you have picked? Who wouldn't you have picked? Who are you thinking about putting your captain this week? All that kind of stuff. As well, if you're in the Mongolian Horses FC Challenge League, let me know how you're getting on in that. I'm doing very badly, which doesn't do this series any good at all. But hopefully I'll come good eventually once I get my head around these new Premier League teams and lineups. So, like I said, thank you for watching. Check out the other videos on my channel as well if you haven't already. And hopefully it'll be a good week.